Well, Phil Nevin is out, so who should be in? Who should be the next Angels manager in 2014? It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And the best way to help us out is by giving us a rate and a review. Thank you to those that have done that recently. We appreciate the 5 stars. And those watching on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed and click that bell to be notified every time a new episode drops.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we are wrapping up our second season here at Locked On Angels. Of course, the offseason is now here for the Halos, and we'll be here Monday through Friday, every single weekday for you, talking about all the news. And of course, there's going to be a lot of news for our Halos over the offseason, including the news that we got yesterday, Mike. Phil Nevin is out as the Angels manager. His option was not exercised for 2024. I mean, I'll share my thoughts in a minute, but I'll let you get into the details. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, not surprised either. Here's one thing that I think is a good nugget of good news, at least for you and I. We're fans of Perry. And I know some everydayers are fans of Perry. He's holding a press conference, they said this morning, so we'll get more information as time goes. Maybe it's already happened, but he's supposed to hold it this morning. And that seems to indicate that he's going to at least finish out his contract, because he does have one more year, which I think is appropriate. I think is good. I think it gives him a chance to put his fingerprints all over this team. We know that Phil is out, and his record wasn't fantastic. The Angels finished 73-89 this year, same record as last year. They went 46-60 under Phil last year, 119-149 under Phil Nevin, Johnny. 50 games. Nope, not 50. That's bad math. 30 games under 500. I got a biblical studies degree, not a math degree. Johnny, give me your initial thoughts on the news about Phil Nevin.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I'm not surprised, and I have thoughts and feelings about Phil Nevin. I think that there was a lot of things that he did well and a lot of things he didn't do so well. I think one thing is his relationship with the players. You and I were always thrilled when we would see him challenge players. Yeah. I think the good example there is like a Jose Suarez, like very early on in Phil Nevin's managerial career. This goes back to last year, going out to pay a visit to Jose Suarez and saying, "Hey, dude, like, you got this? Is this yours?" You know, and so there was that aspect I really appreciated. And I think that might have been a symptom of the fact that Joe Maddon was always so quick with the hook for his pitchers. That it was refreshing to see Phil go out there and really encourage these guys. I think he had a good relationship with the likes of like Mickey Moniak, who was also a former first-round pick, just like Phil Nevin. And I think he had a lot of good influence over those young guys. Mike, I will say, though, game time decisions were not always my favorite from Phil Nevin. And I believe that if I could just pick a number of all the games that you and I have watched this season, I'd say that Phil was probably responsible for about 10 to 15 losses with his in-game decision-making, especially in terms of like bullpen usage or that sort of thing. And what guys he's going to in certain situations. I would say that's a fair number. Maybe it's more like 15 to 20, but I would say at least 10 to 15 are decisions that Phil Nevin made during the game that I think might have cost the Halos some wins. And I felt like from the beginning of this season, a lot of people were quick to blame him for a lot of things. And you and I think we did our best to say, well, hold on. Like, some of that is just baseball. Some of that is just competitiveness and competition. But to be fair, like, I think, like I said, 10 to 15 games, I think over the course of 162, we're very much on Phil Nevin. I understand the reasoning behind this. I think it's for the best. I think it's time to get a manager that Perry Minasian gets to pick himself. We'll get into some of the candidates there. What are your initial thoughts here?
My initial thoughts are, to piggyback off of what you just said, what happened to the Phil Nevin who did talk to Jose Suarez? What happened to that guy? Like, was that the guy that was in the dugout? And was that the guy in the clubhouse? Was that the guy firing these guys up? Or was it just our pendulum swing from Joe Maddon to Phil Nevin? And as fans, we went, hey, I like that. But is that really him? And when you read the comments about how the players felt about Phil Nevin. They're really positive, Johnny. In fact, Trout said he loves Phil, loves playing for Phil. He takes care of his guys. He wants the best for the team, and he wants the best for me. And how much he cares. Reed Detmer said he's very personable. You can talk to him about anything. He's very straight up with you. And even Griffin Canning said, Phil's great. I love him. His players love him too. He's a player's coach for sure. He's a stand-up guy. So this obviously wasn't going to be about Phil's character. Phil seems to have strong character, right?
All the qualities those guys shared. I love playing for him. He takes care of his guys. We've seen that before. Like he, will scream at the umpire. I love that, by the way.
Yes.
He's the MVP of yelling at umpires.
Yeah.
Mike, those are all qualities every manager should have.
Yes.
Right? Like it's he's a creative wrestler on the old wrestling games, right? Like like Phil Nevin is that guy.
Yeah.
And those are all qualities like players coach. Yes. Has his guys back. Yes. He's very personable. Yes. He wants the best for this team. Yes.
Of course he does.
That's what a manager does.
Of course he does. Yeah. And I think that's what you're going to expect to hear from the players. I would be shocked if they, blew him up. And then when they were interviewed specifically by Jeff Fletcher, they were interviewed before Phil was let go. And this was an article that talked about, is he going to be here? If he's not, what happens? Those types of things. And so I'm not surprised by those responses. And I think that you're going to hear those responses from any player about any manager. I think that even if it's a really kind of terrible manager, I think you're still going to hear like, hey, we respect him, those types of things. I don't know, Johnny, if we're going to hear, the nuts and bolts. I don't think we're going to hear like the strategy behind it. Maybe we will, but and that's the thing. Like, I'm trying to think, reason why I'm struggling with words here is I'm trying to think back to like, can I give an example of when people talk about like, man, this guy really knows his stuff, or this guy really does his thing. I can't. I can say, because we're Niner fans, I can say that how they talk about Kyle Shanahan with the Niners and how he runs his system. Brock Purdy talked about it. Jimmy Garoppolo talked about it, that they're very prepared and they know what they're going to do. And so you don't hear that about Phil. Like there isn't an addendum to the conversation. Like, hey, he's great. And right. There's no, and.
Yes.
And so I
and
think
then what?
That's right. And I think that that's really been his downfall. Honestly, I don't know what he brings to this team outside of being a really good guy, And so, and that's great. I love that the players loved him, but as I mentioned on this show, we have a friend who watches and listens, and he said playing baseball in high school and in college, he respected and felt loved and cared for by his coaches. But there was a little bit of fear. There was a little bit of fear of letting him down. There was a little bit of fear of, and I don't know if the players would ever communicate that, but it didn't seem like that translated itself on the field. It didn't seem like there was a frustration. Like you're going to come out and take me out. I'm going to hold your arm down so you're not calling to the bullpen. Jared Weaver yelling back going, no, I'm not coming out. It's Jose Suarez looking in the dugout going, you coming out now? Right.
Yeah.
Like
save me.
Exactly. And I think that might be the mentality that Phil brought. It was cozy. It was comfy. We cuddled. It was really fun, but we went 15 games under 500, right? My math was right there, but we go 15 games under 500. So those are my initial thoughts. I'm not surprised by this. I think that the Phil Nevin that we thought we were getting is not necessarily the Phil Nevin that managed this team.
And he's a rookie manager. He
Sure.
fell into this job because there was a whole ordeal of the team was going to be sold. So ownership doesn't want to, hinder the next ownership group with a manager that they might not want after the first year, whatever that might look like. It would have been a clean break, especially at the end of 2023. It would have been a clean break, and then new ownership could come in and pick their guys. So I still don't think Perry Minasian, even though they let Phil have this next year, has picked his own manager.
Yeah.
And he inherited Joe. He's got Phil, and I understand he didn't have to pick Phil, but given the circumstances of ownership and all of that changing, I mean, Mike, who's going to want to come here and then your boss is going to be different, right out of the gate. And so I think that there's a lot more that is intangible that you can't really see here.
Yeah. Our friend Sam Blum, he's been on the pod before. We love him. He gets criticism a lot because he can be very critical of the Angels, and rightly so.
Yeah.
And because there's a lot to criticize. He had some strong words about the Angels organization and Artie Moreno specifically in an article he published.
Sam, Phil
yesterday.
Nevin's number one fan.
Here's what he said. He said, Artie Moreno will be on his fifth manager since 2018.
Yep.
He doesn't look inward when it comes to assessing his team, but assigns the blame easily. And it's hard to know how a manager is going to fix this team's woes, because it's really not the manager's fault. It really is upper management fault.
It's
right?
all outward blame. Yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, really, it's like, even if you had gotten like Buck Showalter, like, would the season have been that much different because of the bottom floor, Mike? The floor needs to rise. They need to raise the floor. And that's the problem with the Angels, is that development isn't there. All of that is not there. And I think that, yes, I think maybe another experienced manager would have had more success with this team, of course. But look, Phil was a rookie. He dealt with more injuries than I think even last year, even though they had the depth. And I think for the young guys who got to be there, I think that was a good initiation into the majors with him at the helm. So I'm 50-50 on the side of like, hey, Phil was great in these regards and not so great in this regard. I also think you and I had a conversation about, like, does he come back next year? And I think our goal, our benchmark for that was only if they make the playoffs. If Phil Nevin is the one to get them to the playoffs, then of course he could probably come back next year.
If they're playing right now, I think he does come back. I think he gets maybe a 2-year deal. Right. If they're playing right now. And remember, this team was 8 games over 500 at one point. The injuries did hit them. And so that is kind of the bummer about what could have been with this team and also with Phil Nevin. But obviously everything fell apart. And as you pointed out, probably 10 to 15 losses that we could find that were just bad decisions and bad mistakes by Phil Nevin. I mean, when Mariners fans are calling out Phil Nevin's decisions, it's terrible. Right?
They knew, like, oh, Phil, that was a bad idea. Don't pitch to Cal Raleigh on the left. Come on. Hey, coming up on Locked On Angels, we're going to get into a discussion now that Phil Nevin is gone. Who should manage this Halos team? Tried to combine words there. Who should manage this Halos team in 2024? Well, turns out there's actually quite a few options, Mike. So we're going to get into all of that coming right up.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Johnny, I know it was a really difficult season watching the Angels and watching the games and taking notes so that we could talk about it on the pod. But you know what made it better? My Bird Dog shorts. Because
watching Angel games in your Bird Dogs. Let's go.
I was so comfortable and I didn't have to worry about any sort of, like, tight fitting or, not being comfortable in certain areas. And so I really love Bird Dogs. And I know you do too. We both have Bird Dogs. They were given to us. We appreciate that. Johnny, I found out recently that the Bird Dog shorts are swimmable. Like, they're great for our spa or great for our pool. So I jumped in and we were in our spa for a bit, and then I got out, dried off, and then I didn't have to change because they dried really quickly, and I was able to go and do some other things around the house and around town. So super comfortable, super, super nice fitting. Like, and when you get that dad bod or that dude bod as you get older, you need something that fits you, not something that you try to fit in. And that's what's great about Bird Dogs. So you should try Bird Dogs right now. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB to get yourself a pair of pants and shorts. Again, birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB, or you can enter our promo code LockedOnMLB. And when you do, they're going to give you a free water bottle. So good on you. You get pairs of pants and shorts and then a water bottle. Life is good. It doesn't get better than that. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB. Use our promo code LockedOnMLB for that free water bottle. You're not going to want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you that.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Hey, Locked On Everydayers, guess what? Our 2023 Angels roster grade and report card is now available. So there's a Google survey in the link in the episode description. There's a link to the Google survey. You can click that. You can grade each player of the Angels roster and leave us, 1 to 3 words that kind of sums up that player's season or what you think about them or how you feel about them. So again, the report card for the 2023 Angels is now available in the episode description. So click that link, and then we're going to have a few episodes going over the results of the grades that you offer us. So we're looking forward to hearing from you on that one.
All right. So now that Phil Nevin is gone, who should take his place? There's a lot of names out there, John. The first name that comes to mind for me is Buck Showalter, because there was some connections, some conversations that who Perry was actually eyeing. He wanted him. He went to New York.
He wanted him before Joe Maddon.
Yes.
I believe he wanted to let Joe Maddon go and bring in Buck.
Yeah. So veteran manager. The thing about Buck, though, is that he does really great in the regular season. But when it gets to the playoffs, he hasn't really accomplished too much.
Well, let's take it one thing at a time here. Let's get to the playoffs first before we worry.
Gotcha. Yeah, we get to the playoffs and get swept. We're okay with that, right? Like that's how bad it's been. So Buck Showalter is a name that's out there. Walt Weiss is a name we've talked about. Ron Washington is a name we've talked about. Joe Girardi is not a name we've discussed, but he is out there as well. And then of course we've suggested Darren Erstad. I don't even know if he's a part of the conversation, but I am thrilled to see that Angels Twitter has picked up on that as well. And I think we can take credit for that. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm okay with that too. No, we did discuss Girardi just because he's somebody with experience. The last time we had a managerial conversation, and really that's what it comes down to, Mike. Those guys that you mentioned, other than Erstad, who doesn't have major league experience, but he is good at working with college age players. And there are a lot of college age guys on this team right now. Buck Showalter, again, Perry, that was somebody Perry was interested in. Walt Weiss, I think I'm a big fan of, especially coming from the Braves system.
Yeah.
Now he did manage in Colorado and did not have a lot of success, but that seemed to have more to do with his relationship with the front office.
Sure.
So if Perry went out and got somebody he wanted, and that somebody was Walt Weiss, I think that would translate really well. Ron Washington, why the heck not, Mike? I think, I mean, a veteran there. I mean, you look at what Dusty Baker's done for the Astros.
Yeah.
You look at just the experience that Ron Washington could bring to a young team and help them through the next few years to kind of help them gel. That's an interesting one to me. Now, if you go in-house, this one, a lot of people are clamoring for Benji Gill.
Right.
Obviously, he had a great showing for Team Mexico in the WBC. Ray Montgomery's an interesting one because he's been the bench coach, and I don't know that he would be a great manager of a team, but he was somebody Perry moved out of the front office to the dugout.
Yep.
And was kind of Perry's voice in the dugout.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one.
I will say that with Phil's removal, I think that we're going to see a kind of a clean house of coaches. We've talked about all the
100%
things like that.
100%.
I don't think that Ray will go anywhere. I think Ray is a Perry guy, and so I think he'll be in that dugout. John, the name that has come up that I've seen, and we've discussed this with some everydayers, is Gabe Kapler from the Giants. And so I went to a trusted source, a Giants fan and a longtime friend of mine, and asked him, hey, what do you think about Gabe Kapler coming on over? And it was interesting. He texted me back and he said, I like Kapler, not sure about the system of platooning, if that was coming from him or up above. And so what was happening in San Francisco is that they didn't have somebody that was always at third or always at first or always at left or in center or in right. They would have a platoon of a lot of different players. So the lineup would be adjusted based upon the hot hand or based upon the numbers. Hey, he really bats great against left-handed batters or left-handed pitchers, or this guy does this. And so what my friend said was that it really lacked consistency, and he felt like the Giants just couldn't move forward. It was like a train trying to get up a hill, and they couldn't do that.
I can see that.
I'm not a fan of Kapler. I know a lot of people are. I'm not a fan of him just based off of the numbers. When he was with the Phillies, he had 2 seasons with them, Johnny. 2018, he was 2 games under 500. 2019, they finished at 500. Then in 2020, he was hired by the Giants. They finished 3 games under 500. Then in 2021, they were 107-55 out of the blue. I give a whole lot of credit to Buster Posey for that.
Right.
And then 2022, 500. And then 2023, they were 3 games under 500 before he was fired with 3 games left. So I don't know if I'm a fan of his. I know some people are excited about that. I'm not clamoring. And when I look at this list, I don't know who I'm clamoring for outside of maybe Darren Erstad, because I've suggested that in the past. But Darren, again, is a rookie manager that's going to be coming in. And so it might be worth it, especially if Shohei's not coming back. I guess the conversation would have to be very intentional with Mike Trout. But I don't know of a name there that I would go, yes, this is the guy. Let's make that move right now.
There's 2 pathways here. And one of them is you bring in somebody with a lot of experience to shepherd these guys along, like we were talking about with like a Girardi or Ron Washington, or you bring in a young manager to grow with the team. Now, you probably won't get results for a couple of years.
Yeah.
One guy that comes to mind is like Torey Lovullo with the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
Hasn't had a lot of great success, since he got hired.
Yeah.
There was one good year, I think, before 2020, but they're having success now because the young guys are coming up from their minor league system.
Former Angel, by the way.
Right. and the fact is that he has had a lot of time to grow with these guys. And also, I mean, I think he's in his 7th or 8th season with the Diamondbacks. And so there's two things here. It's do you want an experienced manager to guide these guys along, or do you want a young guy to come in and grow with them? Now, you could have said that with Phil Nevin. Hey, first-year manager, let him grow with the team. But I think what's missing, the element that's been missing, Mike, is the connection and the relationship with the front office.
Yeah.
Perry Minasian needs to pick a manager that he can shake hands with and communicate with well.
Synergy, John.
Synergy, baby. Oh, I love the corporate work speak.
Yes.
Synergy between the front office and the manager. By extension, that manager who picks his new pitching coach, his new hitting coach, all that stuff, will be in the same realm where everybody's kind of on this same page and the same pathway,
right?
The same tree of organizational understanding. That's really what it comes down to. So again, Perry Minasian finally getting the chance to pick a manager, I think is a very good thing. And I think it's going to be helpful in the long run. Again, there's lots of options. We might be surprised by, who comes in. As much as you love Erstad and I love Erstad, Mike, Erstad's not going to work with Perry Minasian, right? That wouldn't work at all.
Yeah. Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel. You can get in on all the action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers like you can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. And so if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, now is a great time to do that. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
All right, Mike, we're getting into our last conversation. How does this affect Ohtani's return? Does this have an effect on him wanting to come back this season? What are your thoughts here?
First of all, the offseason content that the Angels create is so fantastic.
Oh, yeah, they're keeping us in business, baby.
They didn't make the playoffs, but we still have a whole lot to talk about.
That's right.
I had family members and friends that were like, what are you going to talk about in the offseason? Oh, trust me, there'll be enough
There's a lot to
talk about, right?
And we can talk about it. We have plenty to say.
Absolutely.
As we have to time ourselves hey, it's time to shut up so that this episode doesn't become 45 minutes, right?
Yes. So, yeah, he is a free agent. And so there is a lot of questions about how this would impact him. I think there are two thoughts here, Johnny. First thought is this communicates with Phil leaving. This communicates, I believe, to Shohei that, hey, we're not going to keep doing the same thing. I know that there are going to be a lot of different managers. You have a thought about that. So hang on to that for a moment. But this communicates, hey, we're not gonna do the same thing. Perry's gonna get his guy. He's been able to draft his guys. Now he can pick his leader. I think secondly, I know Phil and Shohei seem to have a pretty good relationship. I don't think it was Phil, though, that allowed Shohei to be Shohei. I think it was the Angel front office, starting with Billy Epler and then Perry Minasian. And it seems like with Perry, there's been a whole lot more yeah, man, do what you want to do. Right.
I think Joe Maddon had a lot to do with that too. He was like, hey, Ohtani's going to be Ohtani, and that's totally fine. And so
let him be who he is. And so I think, honestly, Perry's staying, and as of right now, it sounds like he's going to finish out the end of his contract. I think him staying is maybe a bit more attractive to Shohei than Phil Nevin. But what are your thoughts?
I'm interested in the idea that this is, the 5th manager in 7 years. And obviously that reflects poorly on what the Angels have been doing over all this time. And I think that was a really good point to bring up. When it comes to Ohtani, it will be his 5th manager anyway, whether he's with the Angels or a new team. Does that make sense? If he goes to a new team, he's going to have a new manager for himself in his MLB career. And if he stayed with the Angels, he would have a new manager. at the end of the day, Mike, Ohtani is going to stick to his routine and do his thing and whatnot. Somebody asked and tried to clarify in the comments, but you mentioned a couple weeks ago that the Angels need a manager like Phil Jackson so that they can get Michael Jordan to play with Dennis Rodman. You kind of mentioned that in the realm of like Ohtani being the Michael Jordan in that situation, right?
Yes.
When it comes to him playing with other guys, I answered back and said, I think it has to do with the fact that like the way Shohei communicated in the WBC to Team Japan was like, if we're in awe of our opponents, then we can't win.
Right.
And so we need to stop admiring them to win. And in the same vein, I suggested that the young guys have to realize like, yes, Ohtani is who he is, but you can't be in awe. Like you have to step up and do your part too in order to have some cohesiveness there. But elaborate on your Phil Nevin, Michael Jackson, Shohei comments in that regard.
Michael Jordan, not Jackson.
I said Jackson. Oh my gosh! I said Phil Jackson, Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan. Oh my gosh!
I'm picking up what you're putting down. I think what we found with Phil Jackson and with Michael Jordan is that Michael has said, like, man, Phil brought even more out of me. And you're like, there was more in you.
Wow.
And I think that the same is true of a really good manager. I think they could bring more out of Shohei. Now, what more could he do? I don't know. And I'm not asking him to do more. What I'm saying, though, is I think it could really draw him out. Maybe that leader that we saw at the WBC, it could draw that leader out. But also, I think you need a manager that can take the bullets, that can stand in front of the media, that can help get all of the narratives out there instead of just not addressing stuff or to say, yeah, they played really well. Or yeah, he's got a little bit of a sore rib. I think having a manager there that can communicate well, but also demand respect and maybe a little bit of fear. I would really be intrigued to see what he could do with this team, but specifically what he could do with Shohei Ohtani, because I think Ohtani would honor that because he comes from a very honorific background, right? And that's what baseball in Japan is all about. And so to have somebody that's in the clubhouse that Shohei would look at and have not just honor, but a deep, healthy fear. I think that would really challenge him, but I think it would really challenge this team. So that is not a negative reflection of Shohei. I think it's a positive reflection. Like you need a manager that can match the aura of Shohei Ohtani and lead this team in a really significant way.
Mike, I have a plan. To get Ohtani back, and it starts with the manager. And somebody suggested this, so I'm not going to take credit for it. Hideki Kuriyama retired from managing after the WBC.
Yeah,
let's get him out of retirement. Let's bring him over to the Angels, and then say, Shohei, we got your old manager over here. We got your guy. You want to come play for the Angels again?
Yeah, and he would be the manager that would probably talk to like Rendon and go, get your butt out there. What are you doing?
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Honestly, with a manager like that, I don't think that there's nonsense with Anthony Rendon. I think either he's rehabbing and being serious about it, or he's not around this team at all.
You just kind of had a light bulb moment for me in that sense. The amount of quote unquote nonsense around Rendon that happened under Phil's watch.
Yep.
Is that something that reflects poorly on Phil at the end of the day? The fact that Rendon was running around being Daffy Duck with the reporters out there, like, what do you think?
I would take that personal if I'm the leader of this team. I would take it personal, and I would say, like, what am I missing? That one of my employees, I know he's a manager, but one of my employees is behaving this way, and it continues. That tells me that there wasn't a clarifying conversation and a, hey, knock it off conversation and hey, be a grown-up conversation, right? And so I think that that's on Phil. And if Phil didn't have those conversations because he's a player's guy, then that's a problem, right? And that makes sense why he's not there anymore.
Absolutely. Before we get off the topic of Shohei Ohtani, we did get a little bit of some insider trading, I guess you could say. But in terms of like what the Angels might offer Ohtani in this offseason, especially with the fact that he won't be pitching. But I'll say this because I don't want to reveal anything that probably won't come true. But I will say this: the Angels are going to make a decent push. It might not be a competitive push.
Yeah.
And I think the future of the Angels really hinges on whether Ohtani comes back or not. And by extension, if Ohtani doesn't come back, I think we're going to see some significant changes.
Yeah.
Ones that we've been calling for for a very long time with this team. So again, buckle up, nerds, because it's going to be a not just analytics offseason, because that's when I say buckle up, nerds. No, buckle up, because it's going to be quite the offseason for our Halos in 2023.
Well, Shohei already said on Instagram that he'll see you in spring training. He'll be ready to go. And everybody was like, he didn't say what team. It's part of the Angels. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Remember, you can grade all of the players with our player grade, and we would love for you to give your opinion. So just check the episode description, click on that document, and then you can give us a grade and maybe a couple of words. And we're going to talk about that in the next few days here on Locked On Angels.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. If you're watching on YouTube, the best way you can help us out, truly helps us out, is by hitting that thumbs up button. Really, just hit that like button.
Yeah.
And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Hey, Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
Well, it may have already happened if you're watching or listening to this, or it may have not happened yet, but there is supposed to be some sort of media scrum with Perry Minasian today. And so we're going to get all the details from that, and then we're going to share those details tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
It's a media scrum with GMPM, and we're looking forward to that because, again, this offseason, buckle up because it's going to be a bumpy ride. All right, friends, until tomorrow's show, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
Media scrum.
Scrum. I don't want no scrum. A scrum is a guy that can't. No?
Angels played like scrubs.